Good evening, folks. Calling the Board of Appeals meeting of December 20th, 2017 to order at 7 o'clock. All members are present, and we have a first case on the docket, which is a continued matter from the last meeting of November 8th, 2017. Case 2817, Michael Welch, map 54, parcel 41. I have a letter that Mr. Welch has sent to the board as of this date, asking that we please accept the letter as a formal request to be postponed to the January 10th, 2018 meeting or for our follow-up meeting regarding 95 Glen Road, Wilmington, Mass. So we have the applicant requesting a continuance till the next meeting. I will say, just as an outset, I'm not gonna be at the next meeting. I have another engagement, and Tony, you probably end up being as the vice chairman, the chairman, but maybe the applicant should know.
I will let Mike.
Because he may want to further continue it,
Continue it, yeah.
because I won't be,
It's
and I've already
winter
heard
time,
it,
so
I've already,
yeah.
so just let him know.
I will.
But for purposes of tonight, I will entertain a motion to grant the request for a continuance, in which may be further continued at the next meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that application has been continued to the next meeting on January 10th.
No, I don't have
Okay. Next case on the docket is another further continued case from the last meeting. Case 2917, Doug Elfman, care of Phil Taylor Esquire, map 26, parcel 7D. And again, this was a hearing that we began at the last meeting, and we had asked that the case be continued so we could get an opinion from town council, which we have received. Counselor, good evening. Have you received any word of that opinion?
It was just an email, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I got it.
Okay. So just for the edification of the board, without sharing the actual opinion itself, which is an attorney-client privilege document, I can state that town council agrees with you. He agrees with your take on the statute, but I'll leave it to the board to further discuss. Do you have anything you want to add to your presentation from the last time?
Not so much to the presentation, and not so much, I think, directly. Just one thing which town council noted was a comment about the applicant not being signed. The application's not signed. And I just wanted to, in case someone had a question about that, the part I think where he was talking about not signed was where it seemed to be the owner to sign when the applicant is other than the owner. But here, the applicant is actually the owner. It's actually the Ida B. Elfman Family Trust is the applicant. And that's why that wasn't signed, because they're one and the same.
I don't believe it didn't have, what I read, it didn't have any impact on council's decision as to the application you have.
It didn't, but because they pointed it out twice, I just wanted to point that out, because it was the way your application reads.
Sure.
That's why.
Have all the members had a chance to review council's opinion on this particular case?
I have, yes.
Everybody, do you feel comfortable to discuss it or entertain a motion? It appears that the relief that the applicant is seeking, according to council, is proper. Anybody have any questions? Anyone care to make a motion?
Just one.
I mean, you don't have to agree with town council.
No,
but-
it's not that I don't agree with them. I can't remember exactly what they were applying for.
They were applying, well,
Appealing the decision of the building inspector.
yeah,
Okay.
the building inspector felt that, the particular garage was out of, I don't know, how would you say it? It wasn't even non-conforming, it was straight out illegal.
Right.
And the town council agreed with Attorney Taylor and felt that it had been grandfathered under the 10-year statute that was referenced at the prior hearing.
My question is that's all well and good, and we, I guess we may all agree on that, but the reason that had to be disposed of was so that they could do something to a non-conforming structure. So are they applying for?
Two things. So it doesn't have to be removed.
Yes.
Because under the building inspector's opinion, it was illegal, and it could be forcibly removed. So not only as a grandfather, it doesn't have to be removed, but from my remembrance of reading the council's opinion, he also believed that it is now no longer necessary to have a variance.
Because it's now non-conforming.
It's now non-conforming, and the applicant no longer needs a variance to modify that particular structure.
Which is not being modified. May I clarify, so there's going to be an application before the board with regard to a second story
That's
on
not-
the house.
it has not been
But
applied
this
for
hasn't-
yet.
Right, but
Okay.
this was because when we went to the building inspector to discuss that, he sent a violation letter dated September 13th about the garage.
I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that we were not approving that
No,
special
that's not
permit.
done yet. So,
Okay.
so we're appealing the building inspector's determination. Now, probably for February, if my timing goes well, we'll be looking for, I believe, a special permit and a variance to put a second story on the one-story home that's there. And we may not be filing at the same time for the groundwater protection special permit. That might come the month after, but we know we need.
It has to be all together, if I'm
No.
not mistaken.
No, we'll need all those permits to get the building permit, but we're going to be, before we engage an engineer to do that stuff,
Oh, you want to know if you can get the variance?
yeah, first step, we gotta start with the variance and the special permit. And my understanding, I just wanted to get clarified, do those require two separate applications to the board?
Yes.
Okay, so those will be those two applications, and then once that gets underway, then we'll probably be engaging with the civil engineer.
The reason that, the reason council addressed it is because at the last meeting, there were a myriad of issues that I felt as long as we were going to town council, I wanted to address everything that could potentially be raised.
Yeah, I think he
under the-
talked about what's needed for the,
Correct,
yeah, what brought us in here.
right. Also gives the applicant some direction as to what they can do.
Yeah, I think we look for a special permit to go up, and I think we need a variance, because in order to get to the second floor, we have to go out pretty much.
The bump
Yeah,
out.
we gotta go up, we gotta pretty much, so we don't have to walk outside to walk up the staircase, we have to bump out a little bit, so I think that needs, that little bit needs a variance, and then going up, I think, is a special permit.
Okay, anything further? Anyone care to make a motion relative to this application?
So I'll make it. Okay, so based on Counselor's decision,
Yeah.
okay?
There's two things. You can agree with the building
Right.
inspector, or you can vacate the building inspector's.
Well, I can move to appeal the decision, right?
No, he's
No,
appealing it.
he's
So
appealing
you would
the
be moving,
decision.
you'd be
You would
moving to vacate the building inspector's decision.
To vacate,
Yes.
like leaving.
Erasing.
Okay, so case 29-17, map 26, parcel 7D. I move to vacate the decision of the inspector of buildings. The existing garage has an addition and no building permit was applied or issued for the carport.
I think that's, do I have a second? I think that's pretty
Second.
self-explanatory. We have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and it's unanimous. Nice to see you, Counselor.
All right, so I'll get a copy of that.
After Christmas, give me a couple of days.
Thank you very much.
It'd probably be like the 26th or 27th.
Thank you.
Are those his papers?
Those, I think, are Raymond's. Okay, so I can have that, and then we go into the new stuff.
Okay. Next application on the docket, new matter, case 3017, Amber Hensley, map 84, parcel 81A, to acquire a special permit in accordance with 6.1.6.4 to construct a second floor addition to an existing non-conforming structure 25.3 feet from the front yard on Regal Road for property located at 15 McDonald Road. Good
This
evening.
is- How's it going?
How are you?
One second. This here is the memo from the planning board for all of tonight's, okay?
Yep, thank you. Hi, could you please introduce yourself and tell us what you're looking for?
Pat Hensley, Amber Hensley, we're just looking to go up, and we need a special permit, too close to the street. And those are the prints right there of proposed and existing.
Yeah, they took the average of the two? And they couldn't, it still
Well,
didn't give them.
because our lot is considered to be a corner lot, so we had to take the Paper Route Street, Regal beside us, and McDonald. We couldn't do the typical.
Across the street.
Yeah, we couldn't cross the street like you typically would on a normal street. So that's how it caused us to not meet the average because of the Regal Road, the one house behind us, that little paper route road.
Okay.
So they're a non-conforming dwelling, and they're asking to extend it up. They're not going out at all, they're just going up.
Yeah, the bump out makes us non-conforming. I think most of the house is 30 feet, the bump out's like 25 or something like that.
What's the difference between that 25.3 and the dwelling without the bump out? Do you know, it's just.
I think dwelling is 30 and the bump out makes it.
So it's five.
So
less
the
than
dwelling,
5
the
feet.
main part of the house is legal, it's just that bump out is
4
like
feet.
5 feet too close.
Gotcha.
Well, this here, yeah,
Oh, okay.
okay.
And we got the architect prints, I think, yeah, the copy of them. Of
Not
what the
appeared.
existing house and the proposed, all that stuff.
And it appears fairly straightforward, you're just looking to go up. But I will open it first to the board if they have any initial questions, then I'll open it to any public comments. After public comments are exhausted, I'm gonna close the hearing, and then we'll deliberate to a result. That's the way it's gonna work. So, anybody from the board have any initial comments, questions of the applicant? Nobody? Okay. Anybody from the audience wish to be heard on this particular application? Seeing no one from the audience who wishes to be heard, I'm going to close the public hearing on it. Seeing that the board has had no questions, does anyone care to make any comments as to a deliberation or make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the
Oh,
special.
I'm sorry, before you get, I forgot to mention that the planning board recommended approval. So, sorry about that.
Make a motion to approve the special permit for case 3017 to construct a second floor to an existing non-conforming structure, 25.3 feet from the front yard, property located at 15 McDonald Road, because it is no more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor? Aye, unanimous.
Beautiful.
All right, congratulations. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Give
you.
me a couple of days.
All right, Tony.
December 26th?
My face.
December 26th?
I'm out the 26th, it won't be till the 27th that it goes out.
We'll bother you after the new year. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Okay. You can keep the planning
Yep,
board thing.
got it, got
Yeah.
it. Okay. Next case on the docket, new case 3117, applicant John Berube, or Berube, map 36, parcel 113A, to acquire a variance from standard dimensional regulations, table 2, section 5.2.4, to construct a 38.6, 38-foot 6-inch by 34-foot two-story addition, 20 feet from the front yard lot line on Aspen Drive, when 40 feet is required for the property located at 1 Russell Road. Good evening.
Good evening.
Could you please state your names for the
John
record?
Barabee, 2543 Main Street in Tewksbury.
Barabee. I had it wrong both ways.
It goes either way. All right.
All right, good evening, folks. Why don't you tell us what you're looking for?
Well, we're looking for relief on the right side of the building. As you said, 40 foot is required because it's a corner lot, so we have 2 front yard setbacks. And they can meet the 20-foot setback if it wasn't a corner lot, they could meet a standard side yard setback. So they're looking for relief so that they can build this addition so that Karen can have her parents move in and she can keep an eye on them and assist them in there.
They're getting on.
Do you want the property?
I don't. just-
No, myself and my
Bill
husband.
and Karen Fitzpatrick.
We're the Fitzpatricks.
But you're the applicant?
Yes, I'm gonna,
And you're from Tewksbury?
yep.
All right, well, as in the prior hearing, I'll first open it up to the board for any questions of the applicant or comments in general.
I have a comment, I have a question. So the breezeway is not there now. You
That's
wanna
correct.
add the breezeway and a two-car garage.
Right.
Correct. There's just a set of
So it
stairs
would
there.
be more of a separate entrance for them.
But if you didn't make it 38 feet .6, you might not. So you only need it for the front or for the side?
Just the side yard,
The
but it's
side
two.
yard.
It's a two
fronts.
frontage, he needs 40 feet for both frontages.
I need the right side of the building on Aspen. Because it's a corner lot.
It was originally a paper street, but then they put a development in behind me a few years back.
But if you made it smaller,
The only reason that I was leaning towards the largest is my folks are selling their house, and it's gonna be difficult for them to go to from a fairly decent sized house to like an apartment. So I was trying to be as fair to them as I could be, do you know what I mean? Just give them as much space as I could. I mean, they're going from like a three bedroom house to a one, you know.
but we can't approve something just because it's financial.
Well, the idea of the breezeway is to help with the ease of the stairs. You know, there's a half a flight of stairs up, and then it's a turn and go up. And then they only have to go down a half a flight to go over and have dinner and whatnot. So it's feasible.
Still would be 40 feet.
We'll make it a one-car garage.
Mr. Chairman, can I get the comment from the planning board?
Oh, surely, absolutely. Case 3117-1 Russell Road. Upon motion duly made and seconded, it was unanimously voted to not recommend approval. In the board's opinion, a hardship has not been demonstrated. And just so the applicants know, for a variance, the standard for a variance, unlike other standards in zoning, is stringent, and they require that you demonstrate a hardship. And the hardship is usually one which is related to the land. Either the dimensions of the land are odd, or there's ledge, or there's something with the land that imposes a unique hardship upon you, and you're looking for a variance for that purpose.
Right. Well, originally, we have more land on the left side of our lot, but the septic is there. And, you know, rerouting the septic and everything else, I don't know what that would entail, but that's.
Plus, the house doesn't flow. I mean, the kitchen and everything's on this
Right.
side of the house.
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I mean, a variance standard, you, first of all, you can't create it, so if you did something to the lot or subdivided it or did something that created the problem, that doesn't count. Financial doesn't count. The only things that really count are the unique shape of the lot, or if there are soil conditions that make it really difficult. Topography, something like that, and you have, and honestly, it's a tough road to hoe. To get a variance is a very strict, stringent standard that not only this board, but I think the law implies it, because what you're looking for is basically an exception to the general rules. Now, I understand that, you know, you're saying that if the house were not a cornered lot, this wouldn't be a problem, but it is. It is a cornered lot. So, I mean, I know it's a tough thing to get it. I don't want to speak for the other members of the board. But, I mean, unless you can articulate a hardship, you know, I'm hard pressed to grant it. But that's just only one voice, so.
Well, if I could, I'd just like to submit this petition that was signed by the neighbors. You got, there's 28 abutters on the certified abutters list. 26 of them signed, one's in California. You know, you got the entire neighborhood that's in favor.
Oh, that doesn't
of
hurt,
this.
that doesn't hurt you, but it doesn't, for purposes of the variance standard under the law, it doesn't really have any practical effect whether people are agreeing with it or not. I mean, I appreciate that. It's nice to know that your neighbors have no problem with what you want to do. But, you know, as a practical application to the standard that we have to, analyze and decide on, that doesn't have much effect, to me, again, and I have to keep stating that, I'm only one person on the board. But I'll open it up to any other discussions before I open up a public hearing as well. Anybody else on the board wish to be heard on this or ask the applicant any questions?
Mr. Chairman, is that dwelling right now situated on that lot, is it conforming? Or is
Yes.
It is conforming. Okay. Answers that question.
Anyone else from the board wish to be heard? No?
I can understand from your perspective. Just from my point of view, and again, it may not be that important, it's fairly still far from the street. I know rules are rules, but it's not like it's gonna be sitting on the street. There's still a decent buffer, you know?
I'll be honest, with you, I feel for you, because I live on a corner lot, and the corner of my house is exactly 40 feet, and I have a one-car under, and I want to put another bay on the side of it. I can't do it, and it kills me. And the street, when I bought my house, was a dirt road on the right side. They paved it. Now this house is at the end of the street. It kills me
Right.
that I can't put a garage on the end of my house.
Right.
And, I have a corner lot, so I understand it, and I have never seen, other than if the lot had, some type of ledge or, some really type of reason why the house was pushed to one side versus
Right.
the other,
Right.
why it would,
Well,
that's
see,
the only reason I've ever seen, I believe this board approve a variance.
It's odd, right?
I mean, you're right, I mean, the house is pretty much dead center of the lot. And
There's
it's,
so much room over here, you know?
I actually think it's about equal,
Is it?
if I do the math, it's pretty damn close.
Yeah?
So, but I understand what you want, and I feel for you, but I've never seen
Yeah.
this board approve something like that, unfortunately. There was a case like this years ago, and they were just asking for the slightest of relief to do something, and that was very small. I mean, they were only asking for a couple of feet.
Right.
And if I remember, it failed. It was to get a ramp and a garage. I actually voted for it, and I think the motion failed because it was such a small relief. But to the letter of the law, they didn't give a hardship. But in that case, my judgment said they weren't asking for a heck of a lot, and it didn't appear to be like it was going to be an issue. But I don't think this falls into that category.
Anyone else care to be heard or ask any questions of the applicant before I open up to the public? Nope. Okay, I'm gonna open it up to the public. Does anybody here wish to be heard on this particular application? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and I will come back to the board and open it up for deliberation as to any potential vote. I will say, just for the benefit of the applicant, that you might be able to see the writing on the wall. If it doesn't go through and we vote it down, you're precluded from bringing anything back for 2 years. If you withdraw it and come up with something, and again, that may not even pass because, it's a pretty strict rule, but if you're preserving your rights to come back with something different, if you withdraw it. If you force us to make a vote and you don't prevail, you're gonna be precluded from coming back for 2 years. On a variance.
Doesn't matter if it's a substantial change?
Oh, no, I mean, you could make it only 1 inch over and it might still get denied.
No,
But,
I'm saying about coming back. Let's just say hypothetically, we take 10 feet out.
That's what I'm saying.
If
You
it's
could take 15 feet out and it still may not pass. But I'm just telling you that if you go forward and it fails,
No, I understand the part about not passing, but can we bring it back if we make a substantial change?
Not
Less
this,
than-
no.
yeah,
Less
not
than
on a
2 years.
no, not on a variance, no.
Does it get attached to the address, nothing at that address, or
What do you
you
mean?
can't reapply for 2 years?
Because what they're looking to do is come back with a different plan, but it's already, this is what they were gonna construct. the thing is, if they're saying no to this variance, what he's trying to say is that there's still no hardship, so how can they say yes to another
I think what
variance?
he's trying to say is we might want to withdraw it, so that if we come up with something else, I don't have to wait 2 years to try it again, is what he's trying to say. I thought there was, as long as you show a substantial change, that may be a planning board thing.
Maybe.
To bring it back to planning board or something.
Yeah, if it actually goes forward to a vote and it's actually voted down, I think you're precluded for 2 years. And I mean, like,
We went through this, though, with the 4th of July. Didn't
that wasn't a
we?
variance, that was a special permit.
And it was a substantial,
But that was a special permit.
Yeah.
A variance, I think,
It's
is
different.
tight. And you know, and who knows, I mean, they may, I'm throwing it out, they may change the zoning in that whole area. You know, I mean, they may just do, you never know, a crazy thing could happen. I'm just saying that if you force it to go, and I'm not saying you're gonna fail, I don't, but if you do, you're basically, you know, you're cutting off, you're not preserving your rights to do something different down the road.
Pull it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess we'll
It's
withdraw.
up to you, if you wanna, you have a right to ask for a vote.
Oh, no, I know that, but like you say, you can see the handwriting on the wall, really. So,
So do you wish to withdraw?
we might as well withdraw and go back and try it again, but if I have to make it fit, then I won't be coming back anyway. That's kinda where I'm at, so, but,
yeah.
Yeah, that is where you're at,
So-
that's correct.
I mean, if we came back for a 2-foot variance, it doesn't sound like it would be,
I don't, well,
I don't know.
I can only speak for myself.
No, I know.
But if you're asking for a withdrawal, is there anyone prepared to make a motion to allow the applicant to withdraw the application at this time?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Good. Thanks for your time.
Good luck, folks. Happy holidays. Okay, and we'll take these up together, obviously. The next and final case, the next and final case on the docket is cases 3217 and 3317. Michael J. Newhouse Esquire, map 45, parcel 137. The first request is to acquire a special permit in accordance with section 6.1.4 to demolish an existing non-conforming structure and construct a new building 15.5 feet from Main Street and 22.4 feet from Glen Road when 30 feet is required for a property located at 80 Main Street. The second applied for application for the board is to acquire a special permit in accordance with section 6.6.7.7 under the groundwater protection district for the property located at that same 80 Main Street. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, for the record, Michael Newhouse, attorney with offices at 20 Middlesex Avenue in Wilmington. I'm also here in my capacity as a principal for Center Development Corporation, which is a family-owned corporation that's the applicant in this case. If it pleases the board, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes before getting to the elements of the request for the special permits that we're here and that is pending before you. Give you some familiarity with the property in question and give you a sense of the regulatory process that we've traveled to get to this point, and just a couple words on just what our personal and business objective is here. The property that is the subject of the applications is a 44,000 plus square foot parcel that is located at the intersections of Glen Road and Main Street. My wife and I, through the corporation, purchased that property earlier this calendar year, and we brought a petition to town meeting to rezone a portion of it, so the entire site is shown there with the neighborhood business labeled at NB and the R10 that's all highlighted in its entirety in the pink highlight. It does not include the green area to the right or to the south of the neighborhood business portion. That property that's labeled abutter is the property that's known as 84 Main Street, and that's an engineering office currently. Prior to town meeting, we met with the planning board and the finance committee in a joint public hearing. We presented a concept plan that comports with the site plan that's before you. The planning board and the finance committee unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning of that portion to the neighborhood business. At town meeting, on a voice vote, the town meeting voted to support that rezoning as well. Since that time, we've obviously developed a site plan. We submitted this plan to the planning board for site plan review and for a stormwater management permit. As part of that process, we met with a myriad of town department heads through the community development technical review process, received their comments and recommendations and suggestions, and based in large part on those recommendations, the planning board, after 2 public hearings, granted the site plan approval and the stormwater management approval. From a personal perspective, the bigger picture here is subject to this board's approval. We would divide the property between the neighborhood business and the R10 portions of the property. We hope to construct a commercial professional office building as shown on the site plans for the purpose of maintaining my law practice. And it's our intention to construct a home for the family right next to it on that R10 portion fronting on Glen Road. You'll notice the design of the building as it's been presented, at least at the schematic design phase. It looks very much like a house, a colonial house from the outside. That's very intentional for a number of reasons. One reason is so that it will kind of dovetail with the residential portions of the neighborhood, but also with the existing developed commercial properties that are in the area. It's also designed such that we can repurpose it as a family at some point in the future to be used as a single-family residence. So I know the board is aware, folks in attendance or watching on TV might want to know that the neighborhood business district allows for single-family dwellings as a matter of right, and also allows for uses like a professional office building as a matter of right.
Did you say you were going to, at a later date, repurpose the commercial building back to a residence?
It is, we're designing it so that if that becomes desirable, it wouldn't be unduly
just wondered-
difficult to
I
do that. Yeah,
caught it, and I
but that's
just got one,
exactly what
yeah,
I said.
okay.
Yep. In terms of the existing conditions, the site right now is improved with a single-family home that was constructed in roughly the year 1900. It is conforming, even after the property would be divided, it would be conforming in all respects under the zoning bylaw, with the exception of the front yard setbacks from both Glen Road and from Main Street. And certainly, we'll get into those specifics as the board entertains the application for the special permit. For now, though, I'd want the board to be aware that the current house that sits on the property is roughly 4,600 square feet, and it's got roughly 2,500 square feet of finished living area and 5 bedrooms. Currently, it's served by an on-site septic disposal system of some kind, which would be abandoned, and under the proposal, it would be connected to public water, public sewer, and natural gas along Main Street.
So where is the existing dwelling on your map? Am I missing something?
It's actually almost directly underneath the proposed dwelling. So I know that the plans that you have are not full-size. The existing dwelling is in a lighter shade, is slightly closer to Glen Road and to Main Street than the proposed dwelling. But the foundational footprint is nearly the same. The footprint is somewhat larger on the proposed structure, but it's no higher. So in other words, there's no vertical extension of no portion of a non-conforming wall. And to the extent that it is a longer building from front to back, no portion of the wall which is being extended would encroach on the front yard setback. So, in essence, what we're asking the board in the first application to approve is to allow us to push back the existing foundation, which currently is 21.8 feet from Glen Road and 15.5 feet from Main Street, and allow us to construct a new structure which would be slightly less non-conforming, to the order of 22.4 feet from Glen Road and 15.8 feet from Main Street.
So what's the reason why you wouldn't want to keep it as the same footprint?
Just so that technically it's non-conforming. The reason why, and it brings up an important point in terms of the overall layout of the site. We don't want to push it back materially any further away from the intersection for a number of reasons, but not the least of which are the sight lines that a couple of the residents on Glen Road have through this site towards Silver Lake, and Silver Lake is located over here. Just by way of information, prior to presenting a concept plan for town meeting for the purposes of the rezoning, I went and spoke with some of the neighbors, and our original concept actually had a roughly 28 by 46 box with an attached garage. The neighbors were supportive and helpful, but the folks on that section of Glen Road expressed that they would prefer to still be able to see the lake.
Now, you're proposing a garage with a residential dwelling in it, on it?
That's right, so the detached garage that's proposed would be a two-car garage with a residential unit above it. The foundational footprint would be a little over 700 square feet.
So that's actually two homes, right?
Well, it's only one home, you can only do one home, so this building here that's proposed is strictly an office building. This building here is strictly a garage
But at
with a
one time,
residential unit.
you'll be able to convert that if you want to as a single-family home.
If I ever, if given my family circumstances, it became desirable to repurpose this to a home, then I would have to repurpose this to an office. I'd have to do that at the
Or you
same
could
time.
have two residential dwellings there.
No,
You can't do that under the bylaw. The bylaw allows for a mixed use in the neighborhood business district, but it does not allow for more than one residential dwelling on one lot unless it's in, the central business district or neighborhood mixed, unless there's an express zoning district that provides that.
So you're saying right now, as it stands, if this was a business building as it's going to be, and you were gonna construct a garage with a dwelling in or on it, or whatever, if you wanted to convert that business to a single-family dwelling, you would stop the residents from, you'd have to stop the residents from living in that garage area, is that what
I
you're
would
saying?
have to do that. In fact, in order to get the building permit to do the work to repurpose the primary structure, if you will, the larger structure, into a residence, I'd have to apply to get a building permit and subsequently an occupancy permit. That occupancy permit would not issue.
But
if
you
there
already
were
have,
no-
let's say, in my example, you already have an occupancy permit for the garage area.
That's
So
right.
you're saying that would be taken out?
Yeah, I'd have to abandon that
Really?
and convert that to a commercial purpose and then get the building permit for the
Does it have to be
residence.
converted to commercial, or can you just keep it as a garage?
I could keep it as a garage, but I would have to abandon its use as a residential.
But you
yeah.
don't have to have a residential use and a commercial use. You can have
Correct.
one or the other if you want.
Correct, right. And just in terms of the adjacencies as well, there's a copy of the GIS map that I brought that I thought might be helpful. Just to put this in perspective, the subject property is right here at the intersection of Main Street and Glen Road. This blue highlight is a recreation of the neighborhood business district. So across the street here, you've got like a doggy type salon, pet salon. Over time, there's been a history of barbershops and nail salons and personal care type places here with a single family residence immediately behind it. Some of you might recognize the sandwich shop over here that years ago was Tattersalls store when I was a kid. That likewise has the retail establishment and then the single-family structure behind it on the same lot. So this property right here at 84 Main Street is an engineering office. This 96 Main Street is a dentist's office. And this property right here is I want to say a two-family residence that was built many years ago and predates a lot of the current zoning. So in terms of the use, it's consistent with the neighborhood. With respect to the application itself, in terms of the pre-existing non-conforming setbacks, and I know the board is aware that the board simply needs to find that the proposal isn't substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the current building. You know, it's being pushed back ever so slightly. It's no taller. It's basically in the same place. So I'd
So Mike, what I'm having a little problems understanding is, so you're asking for a special permit for the dwelling, I get that. But it says nothing about the garage, so
Yeah,
I'm just not following that.
actually don't need any relief for that. That's
Well,
permitted as a matter of
you're calling it
right.
as a residential, you're saying it could be used as a residence. Is
Um,
that, so if we approve the special permit, by seeing it on the drawing, are we essentially approving that garage with the residency in it? Is that all part of the
I don't think of
special
it that
permit?
way, and here's why. I think that if I came in here this evening, made no mention of the two-car garage in the residential unit, presented the proposed building, and asked for the special permit to extend or change those non-conforming setbacks, and the board gave that special permit, then as a matter of right, I could go in and get a building permit and construct that other
not a
unit.
residency.
No, the unit as well.
How do you get
Yeah, because the neighborhood business district, going back to 1955, permits both residential and commercial uses on the site. So from my perspective, it would be disingenuous not to include that on the plan.
What we're approving is for the business building only.
What you're approving is, yes, is.
It's not approving the garage with the residency, is that correct?
Correct. The building inspector, with advice of counsel, has already indicated that's a lawful use of the property. The only relief that is sought through the special permit is to alter the pre-existing non-conforming structure, which historically has been used to a house,
Right.
but which I intend to rebuild and use as an office.
So, again, so if you started building that garage, let's say we did approve this special permit, and you did do the garage, build a garage with the residency, it wouldn't be on our special permit that you did that.
Correct.
So this is very separate from that. So
It-
it's
yeah.
just a little concerning where I see the drawings, and then it talks about a proposed dwelling, so it's almost
Yep.
like it's blending in with this building.
Yeah, well, to the contrary, the reason why it's shown on the plan is because I think that in coming here and asking for a special permit for the relief that is sought on this building, my plan is to have a two-car garage with a residential unit in it, and I just don't think the right way to do business is not to provide that information. Myself, I don't think that it speaks to the relief that's requested, but I think that anybody
You're trying to
that
give
comes
us the
in-
whole picture.
I'm trying to give you the big picture, and when you come in for a special permit, I think that's what you're supposed to do.
As long as we're only approving the special permit as it's written, but not as it's proposed within the drawing regarding the garage, right?
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, the request for the special permit is to alter the pre-existing non-conforming structure
Period.
to allow for setbacks not less than blank.
Right, and that's all we're doing.
That's
Okay.
what I think your jurisdiction is, but,
Is that right?
And groundwater, which we'll get into.
Yeah,
As far as the
Well, that's
two
what-
buildings.
Right, right, no, I think, and from what I understand, in the neighborhood business district, you can have both a office-type setting and a residence. The only thing he's looking for is relief under a special permit to modify the dwelling that's already there, raise it, and he's actually moving it back more and making it less non-conforming. He's giving us, for our informational purposes, he's letting us know that he's going to have another dwelling which qualifies under the neighborhood business district as a, as a residential building with a garage on there, but he can get that as a matter of right. He's just letting us know that's what he's doing.
Do we know that it meets, does it conform?
It does.
Well, doesn't he, I mean, I would agree he can, just a question, I would agree he can build it by right because of the setbacks. But because it's in a groundwater protection district,
you
he
have to come
can't
in.
do it by
You
right.
can't, you have to do a special permit.
No, but we're dealing right now with the special permit.
Oh, no, we're dealing with that lot.
In terms of.
Right, but that's the second case. The first one, we haven't even gotten into the groundwater yet.
Right.
But for purposes of the special permit, he's only seeking to modify the dwelling that's already there. It has nothing to do with that particular additional dwelling in the back.
Right, and for informational purposes, that's a valid point, that I suppose if I came in I could come in tonight for the special permit to alter the pre-existing non-conforming structure, and I could come in looking for a special permit under the groundwater protection district and not show that second building anywhere. And then I could subsequently come back in. The point is well made that I would have to come back in for the groundwater protection district in order to get the building permit for that second unit.
I'm good with
Right,
that.
that's a good point.
That's a good point.
Well, the reason I mean, I don't think there's really anything wrong with this, but my only point is why I think it's more, I look at it as a whole site. Because if
That's how I
you
look at it.
approve the office, or the building in its current form with the parking and the circulation that's required for it, the lot coverage is enormous. So you approve the business, and with that, you're approving the ground cover and the parking and the circulation as an implied approval. Maybe that's not the right term, but you're implying that that's approved. Now you come back for the second one, which was in the groundwater. The first one's already approved, so he can put a building there. So, okay, he's got an approved building. Now, what do you not approve the parking lot and everything else on the
Yeah,
site?
he needs approval of both.
Get it?
So my comment, because you just brought it up, I'm not in favor of the way that you have two entrances going, one from Main Street and one on Glen Road. And what I compare that to is on Washington Street, with how that's set up. I'm sure they would have loved to have two entrances on the salon there. But I don't have any knowledge of what was ever discussed on that, but obviously they didn't approve it because you can't get out onto Washington to Clark to hit the light. You have to go out on Main Street. So if this is gonna be a commercial type, I see it more of it's neighborhood commercial, I don't know, it's kind of an oxymoron, but I just feel that it should only have one entrance, and that should be on the main road, because it's pretty tight down there on Glen Road anyways.
Well, if I could, Mr. Chairman, speak to that particular issue. First of all, I don't know the circumstances behind the Clark Street, Main Street development either, but I do know this site, and this site currently has two curb cuts from the site onto Glen Road. They're very tight together, something to the order of within 30 feet, and both of them are about 15 feet in width. So we're actually taking away a means of access and egress. We're taking away two and putting in one means of egress. So from a practical perspective, this is actually much less burdensome for traffic on Glen Road as the existing house with the two curb cuts. That's number one. Number two, we've been through the site plan review process, and through that process, having the input of the planning department, the town engineer, the DPW, public safety, given the input of all of those folks, this is a site layout that is the result of that pretty arduous process. So we're always stuck in that situation of trying to meet a threshold requirement of a special permit and yet develop plans fully through, a very rigorous process, which we've done, and that's the result of that. And by the way, in terms of Glen Road, I know that, I grew up on a street that is off of King Street. I've seen the complexion of town change, and particularly Glen Road, over the years. But I also, before I went to rezone that property, I pulled the records from the Wilmington Police Department, and in the entire year of calendar 2016, there were only 2 car accidents on that stretch at this intersection right here. There were 2 fender benders where there was, no ambulance, no tow trucks, and away they went. So, that traffic along that section of Glen Road, I think is a lot different from the opposite end at the intersection with Middlesex. And furthermore, the folks that I have talked to, a resident from Faulkner being one of them, and the folks on Glen Road, they like this layout. Part of the benefit to this layout, and I just need to underscore it because I think it's important to understand, kind of the big neighborhood picture, is that without that, invariably, what ends up happening is we go back and we totally redesign the whole site, and, we end up necessarily doing the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish for the neighbors. And it's not just for them. I don't want, in the end, when the neighbors suggested that change, it ended up with what I think is a better layout. But certainly the impetus behind that was the neighbors. And the other thing is the concept plan that we brought to town meeting that was endorsed by the town. You seldom get a concept plan that's brought forward through the entire site plan review process, wherein everything matches up so closely. And in large part, that was driven by, I think, the communications that I had with the neighbors prior to town meeting and going through the planning board process and the site plan review process. They're the same, so this is the project that the neighbors and town meeting and planning board and all the town administration supports.
Can I just ask one other question, just for my information? In this type of business district, neighborhood business, is it one business, or could you subdivide that and have multiple businesses in there?
You could subdivide it and have multiple businesses. At least that's my understanding. I can tell you that my intention is that my practice kind of ebbs and flows, and certainly there'll be some flex space in there that I can use, and it'll have plenty of room for when I ramp up and hire some other folks. So I can, from my perspective, it's not the way the building is going to be designed on the interior doesn't lend itself to different businesses.
Do you want to touch on the groundwater? Because I think it just makes sense to take up everything together.
Sure. When I looked at the bylaw, it's pretty clear, I think, that in order to issue the special permit, there's a requirement that the groundwater recharge system with stormwater infiltration systems would be included in the plan. I can tell you that this site plan has been vetted by the engineering department thoroughly. They're happy with the stormwater management plan. Just in a very general sense, the runoff on this site, this area of the site is slightly higher than the northerly or front of the site. Runoff will go to a retention basin at the northerly corner of the site. And then on the rare occasion where there's some excess flow, then there's a system that will shed that water back here to the southerly portion of the site.
They calculate out the impervious?
They did. It's on this plan. So the square foot of parking and paving and walkways is 6,200 and some change. The garage roof area is 720, and the building and porch roof area is 1687.
Is that based on the whole lot or just the part that the building's on?
That is based on just this portion, which, the zoning district line is there, the anticipated lot line bow ties a little bit right here, that is on this site.
Okay.
Which I think if you look at the numbers for the abutting engineering firm that's located at 84, and then the dentist's office at 96, they're ballpark, they're comparable.
Mike, that, where it says R10, is that piece with the piece that you have, is that all one piece, where it says R10?
It is, so
So that's adjoining, that's your ownership also?
this
Yeah.
right here,
Now, let me ask you, that line that's going between the NB and the R10, where you cut it off, right there?
Yep.
Are you cutting that R10 off from that lot?
I am, but not exactly in that line. Let me explain that. In order to define the zoning district boundary, it made sense to describe it as extending, kind of extending the rear lot line of the engineering office next to it, of that lot. So the zoning district line runs, is essentially an extension of the rear lot line of the neighboring property owner. The lot line itself will be more like this, and it is shown on the set of plans that's submitted, but it's gonna be bow tied like that. So this is an accurate depiction of the neighborhood business district. It is close to where the anticipated lot line is going to be. We've held off on submitting an A&R plan to the planning board until such time as we get before this board, hopefully for the approval of what we're here for, at which point we would submit an A&R plan to the planning board. And then an added regulatory step in this case is the fact that it's registered land, so we have to have the land court approve the A&R plan that would be endorsed by the planning board.
How many feet would you say between the two buildings, the existing garage that you want to do and the office building? How many feet would you say there exists between the two?
Between the proposed office building on the site,
Yeah, in other words, the back of your site now, the office building and the garage that you're proposing, how many feet would you say they would be? The reason why I'm asking that, because obviously, you got plenty of land, and I'm just wondering, you know, the R10, obviously, there's gonna be something more put on that, and I'm just wondering if you could push the garage, if it's being encroached on your office building, if you can push that dwelling back.
well, what we did was we kept the garage at 15 feet off the zoning district line, and we kept it 15 feet off of this lot line. So,
But
in
for
it,
the
I
two
can't,
buildings, though, I mean, I'd like to know between the office building and your garage, in other words, 100 feet, is it 50 feet? Because you got parking back there also.
you know what, here's what I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna use the 46-foot building as my measuring stick. And it's a little more than that. So I'm gonna ballpark 50 feet by that scale.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just one question, and I'm sure that the planning board would have commented on this, but where you have your, the parking along the back of the site, does it matter that the parking goes over the business line into the R10?
We did have that conversation, and also with the building inspector. There's a provision in the zoning bylaw that says when a zoning district line bisects a piece of property, one can use up to 30 feet beyond the zoning district line for the purpose for which that other, so in this case, the business use can go beyond the zoning district line for up to 30 feet. So I'll give you an example of that. The condominium development on Middlesex Avenue, which happens to be beside my office, it's over near Rotary Park, the beige ones. That property is split by a zoning district line. And if you go on and look, like, I believe that entire row of buildings on the right side, that zoning district line like cuts through the building. So that's a good example of how that's been done.
Anything else?
So I guess I have to go back to this driveway. So you would be opposed to just having one driveway, the one that's on Main Street for the in and out?
Respectfully, yes, but the reason why, I'm not sure I would use the word opposed, but the answer would be yes, for a number of reasons. Number one, if I do that, from my own personal perspective, individual perspective, is that I now have to go back through this regulatory process and go back through the planning board and change the whole plan around, which, that's just from my perspective. From the bigger perspective that I would hope would be compelling for folks is that inevitably that is going to lead to a different site layout that I don't believe works as well for the neighborhood, and particularly I think is going to affect the sight lines from those homes on Glen Road to the lake.
Well, besides going back and getting it reapproved, I mean, it wouldn't change anything if you just didn't use the other entrance out. You just made it one.
He would have to go back to site plan.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to, but even
If
aside
it
from
was
that.
approved that way. I don't know.
It was, I mean, that plan that I submitted to the Board of Appeals was the plan that was approved by the planning board through the site plan process.
I mean, I don't want to curtail debate, but that's not something that we're looking at with the application. That is purely like a planning type of an issue. So if we get caught up with doing that all the time, I mean, literally, the planning board may get ticked off and our meetings will go on a very long time. I mean, stuff like, curb cuts and trees and all that stuff, we're here just to see if the proposed new dimensions on this non-conforming property are acceptable. And that's on the one, then
Just
on
so
the
you know,
ground we're on the other one.
the lot is not non-conforming. The lot.
No, but the property, the current dwelling is.
The structure, there's.
Oh, no,
yeah,
the
there's-
current dwelling is.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what he's here now to get a special permit to make it less non-conforming, but still non-conforming.
I would agree with that, and just to add, and I'm not sure if anybody in the audience has any comments, but I guess I would just summarize by saying that in every respect, having gone through this process, everything that is shown on that plan that's being proposed complies with zoning, both in terms of use and dimensional requirements, but for the front yard setbacks. And having been through that process, I think that it makes sense to be doing it this way.
So it's not conforming, we get that, the building's not conforming, the land's okay. And you're making it less or more non-conforming.
Less non-conforming.
Right, so why don't you keep it the way it is? Why are you expanding it's almost like you're expanding the non-conformity, right?
I'm not, no. So the reason why we pushed it back ever so slightly is just so that it is less non-conforming. And I'm not here to sell anybody that it's a big difference. It's only a foot, but it is less non-conforming.
Less non-conforming.
Right,
Yeah.
and it does not create any non-conformities, nor does it exacerbate any other non-conformities, because there are
All
none.
right, I get it, thank you.
I think the applicant's asking for specifically the building, he's asking for something that's reasonable, because he's not, we do a lot of these special permits that are non-conforming, where the applicant comes in and there's a 22-foot house and they want to build a 28-foot wide house. So he's coming back and basically putting a house roughly on the same footprint of the existing house. So, in my opinion, he's not increasing the nonconformity. And, so I look at it just from the application to build the house. To me, it's reasonable.
Before I go to the audience, I will state, just for the record, the planning board in their meeting on December 5th, unanimously voted to recommend approval both on the special permit and as well as the groundwater protection. So they're in accord. Is there anybody from the audience that wishes to be heard on this? No? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I'll kick it back to the board for deliberation and potential motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Make a motion to,
Why don't we take them up one at a time? Want to do it that way?
sure.
Okay.
Make a motion for case 3217 to grant the special permit to demolish an existing non-conforming structure and construct a new building 15.5 feet from Main Street and 22.4 feet from Glen Road, when 30 feet is required for the property located at 80 Main Street, because the proposed dwelling is no more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, unanimous. And then the second motion?
To acquire, I recommend approval of case 3317 to grant a special permit for a building in the groundwater protection district for the property located at 80 Main Street.
Do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Oh.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous.
Thank you all.
Good luck.
Have a good
And
night.
like
Merry
I told
Christmas.
everybody else, give me till after Christmas. Everybody's in such a hurry. All right, there's a few things.
Do we have any housekeeping
Yes,
issues?
we do.
Do you need your planning board recs back?
Yes.
I think there's a lot of, it's not what we're supposed to look at.
And just for a point of interest, something I never knew. Planning board can't deny a site plan. They can't disapprove a site plan, as long as it meets the criteria.
What?
They don't disapprove site plans. Like, you can turn around and say you disapprove something or approve something. Planning board can't. When they do a site plan, they have to, even with all the conditions, they can't deny.
Well, that would have been nice to know.
The only question I have
beforehand.
on the.
So when they recommend approval, it's that they approve that site plan, but they can't disapprove it.
Right, but when they review the site plan, they review the lot coverage. That's part of their purview, correct?
No. Oh, the lot coverage? Oh, I see what you're saying.
The amount of impervious, they review and look at it and say, well, you've covered so much of a percentage of the lot. We feel that, you're gonna take out 5 parking spots and create some more open space. That's what.
Right.
That's their job, correct?
I believe so. I believe so. Don't quote me.
Well, if it's not their job, it's our job.
And that's the other thing. It used to be in our bylaws, the old bylaws, about lot coverage. It had to be a certain percentage.
So
You
used
can't
to be
go
called
over
an
it.
FAR.
Yeah, but it's not in it anymore. I've noticed that, so
It's an older.
somehow it got lost in the shuffle, I think.
So how can that be, how can the, language saying, oh, well, the, planning board approved it, but they really didn't, what is,
Well, what it is the planning board has a criteria that they set up for these different special permits in different situations on lots. And what they do is they go over the site, what they're planning, what they're proposing, get it so that everything meets the criteria, but they can't say, well, you can't do this. If it's a special permit type thing, that's where the board comes into it. That's why, even though they might recommend approval, the board is
But
the,
it doesn't leave planning board until it meets the criteria.
right,
So it's
right, so it's more or less, everything is, all the ducks are in a row.
yeah, but I still disagree with, having 2 entrances. I mean, it's gonna be a cluster.
See, I'm a little lost in this last case. I mean, it's not conforming, but yet, what I see is enough square footage. How come that building couldn't have been bumped back?
I don't know if we should be, I mean, the application's
It's
closed,
done.
it's done. I
Yeah.
don't know if we should be
No, it's
like,
done. That's why I'm
the
bringing it up.
applicant's not here to talk about it. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I know that, but I'm just saying among ourselves, we took a vote, and I still don't understand, you know, how the heck that, with that much room, why that was even, you know, asking for a
But that's a
non-conforming
question that
variance.
you have to ask when
Town
you're,
council, I guess.
when you're listening to these people. If you
was
have
listening.
questions, you have to ask. I was talking to Jackie earlier and I said, the thing that you have to learn is to ask the right questions. If you feel that something's not right, you have to ask, you have to at least ask the question to get an answer. So, we have two sets of minutes, October 11th and November 8th.
okay, why don't we take them up?
These you have to sign, these are tonight that were.
Why don't we take up the minutes? Do we have a motion as to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
Making a motion to approve.
I don't remember what minutes they are. What are the minutes again, Tony, the dates?
October 11th and November 8th.
Jackie, we need a second from Jackie.
Second.
Who
Jackie
made the
started
motion?
it.
I did.
Oh, okay. A, B, J, second, okay. So those are good.
Okay,
This
we
way
have a
here, I
motion
don't
and a
have to chase
second.
you down.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
So, just so you know, I'm retiring in a year, so you guys,
You can't.
you gotta ask questions. All the,
No, they think.
that's my thing with you people. You've gotta ask questions. You have to ask the right questions.
All right, any other administrative items that need to be
That was
taken up?
it, I believe. Everybody signed this stuff and gave it back to me. So, that's a good thing.
And our next meeting is
It's
January
10th,
10th.
and you're not gonna be
I will
there.
not be here, so there'll be down one. You just might want to communicate that to the folks.
I'll call everybody that's on in case they wanna just,
Did we have a
If
full
there's-
board for the continued one? Were we all here for the continued one? The original opening of the case? So do we?
Which one?
oh, Mike,
one,
yeah.
well,
Mike Welsh?
I
Yes.
believe, hold on,
I think we
Yeah,
will,
yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
did.
were.
We were.
I think we all
I will
were.
say this.
Cause he wanted everybody to be
All
here.
right, it just, if for some reason something is pressing and they want a full complement of the board, I could entertain something a couple days prior to the 10th, but after the 10th, I'll be down for
But
2
it's,
weeks.
what happens is, everything has been now advertised. Everything is in the process. You have to do so many weeks
Gotcha.
ahead of time
Yep.
and stuff. So that's why I said, you can always change it to a later date and you will not be available for 3 or 4 weeks.
2 weeks,
Yeah.
whatever, I get you.
So, so my thing is, at least they can turn around and say, well, just continue it to February. And that's what I will let Michael know, and I will let these other people, I believe the cases, there's, special permits and stuff, so I don't think it's anything controversial. A lot of people will go forward. It was just with, he knew he had a large road to hoe
Oh, yeah.
on this. So-
Okay, seeing nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion adjourned.
And it's 8.